A few veteran Boston Bruins will be facing some pressure this season, two looking for new contracts, and one who will hopefully be playing with a new one.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Monday, September 16th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Before we get started, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. Today on the show, we are talking about three players who are in need of some big seasons here for our Boston Bruins. And we've talked a lot about young guys that need to step up, some holes that need to be filled. And we're going to focus today on three core-ish players for the Bruins that really need to step up and have big years. And we're going to start with Trent Frederic. Trent Frederic is 26 years old. He's going to turn 27 in February, and he's in the final year of a contract that's paying him $2.3 million. So he can become an unrestricted free agent next summer. Now, longtime listeners of the podcast will know that I've kind of come around on Trent Frederic. I wasn't a huge fan early on in his career, but he has really come on and developed into a reliable offensive threat, a responsible defensive performer, and arguably a core player for the Boston Bruins. And he has an opportunity this coming season to cement himself as such and earn a nice new contract prior to becoming an unrestricted free agent next summer. Now, I think my frustrations with Frederic came to a head when I was in Ottawa a couple of years ago watching the Bruins take on the Senators. And Frederic, there was a scramble in front of the net. He grabbed the puck and swiped it out of the zone towards center ice, taking a clear penalty. For me, that was kind of what he brought to the table. Some offensive upside and potential, but also some boneheadedness and shall I say, physicality that wasn't really necessary or kind of went over the top or overboard. In fairness, that's kind of what his role was coming in. He was a bottom six player, not necessarily counted on for offensive contributions, but to bring some physicality to the lineup. That role has since been passed on, or others have been brought in to take on that mantle. And now Frederic has an opportunity to become more of an offensive threat night in and night out. To his credit, he has improved offensively in each of the 4 seasons that he's played with the Bruins. Now, in his first fullish season or half season, he had 4 goals, 1 assist in 42 games. Then he had 8 goals, 10 assists in 60 games. 2022-23, he had 17 goals and 31 assists. 17 goals and 14 points for 14 assists for 31 total points. And then last year, really breaking out with 18 goals, 22 assists for 40 points. And I think there's still another level to be reached there. The 29th overall pick from 2016 could possibly grab a spot in the top 6 and play alongside Charlie Coyle and Brad Marchand. That is a center that he has some familiarity with, or quite a bunch actually, playing on the third line mostly a couple years ago. That line of Bertuzzi, Coyle, Frederick to end 2023 was probably the best third line in the NHL. Last year, he played the majority of his time with Coyle and James Van Riemsdyk, who signed a contract yesterday with the Columbus Blue Jackets for $900,000. Well deserved, and I'm glad to see him back in the NHL. Frederick also spent some time with Geekie and Van Riemsdyk, Geekie and Lauko, Geekie and Heinen, and played 50 minutes last season with Coyle and Marchand. That line was a +2 in goals for, 3, 4, 1 against. Not the best underlying numbers, but it shows that Frederick could indeed warrant some time in the top 6 and earn perhaps a bit more power play time as well. He's averaging only 12 seconds of power play time for his career, only 21 seconds last season on average. If he can grab a spot, say that our boy Jake DeBrusk used to occupy, then the sky's the limit for Trent Frederick. If he can get on the power play, and even if it's on the second unit, really up his power play time, then he could really be a bit of a difference maker here for the Bruins. Right now, daily face-off line combinations have Morgan Geekie on the right side on the first power play unit. They have Matt Poitras on the right side on the second power play unit with Pavel Zacha, Charlie Coyle, Elias Lindholm, and Brad Marchand on the first one. But if Frederick can jump into a power play role this season, that will really increase his value and could put him to the 20-goal, 50-point range as well coming up for this season. And that could make him a $4 to $5 million player moving forward and cement him as a core member of this team moving forward. Yes, Fabian Lysell is going to have the upper hand when it comes to grabbing that second line right wing spot as a right wing shot, as a offensive player playing with two veterans, but don't rule out Trent Frederick coming into camp. And we all know about that contract year bump where guys know that they are playing for their next deal and want to maximize their value. He's going to be 27. This is prime years for Trent Frederick, and for the Bruins to succeed after having lost Jake DeBrusk, Danton Heinen, James Van Riemsdyk. Frederick can really jump in there to that Jake DeBrusk role as an offensive contributor, defensively responsible forward who plays on the power play. And that's the key there for him to really get that offensive boost. He needs to come into camp and grab a power play unit spot in order to maximize his potential and his value as he is set to become a free agent next summer and prove that he is a core member of the Bruins moving forward. One guy who's certainly a core member as captain is Brad Marchand, and he faces a similar situation, albeit later in his career. We'll discuss Marchand here as the podcast continues. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel in the past. Well, America's number one sportsbook is that for a reason. We have something a little different for you here today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. All you have to do is go to FanDuel, put some money down on, say, the New York Patriots next game, which is against the New York Jets. The over-under is set at 37.5. Bet $5 on that and get that 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. Visit FanDuel.com to download America's number one sportsbook today. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. And while you are looking for your next listen, check out Locked On NHL. All the latest news, analysis, and opinions from around the hockey world with expert analysis from our local hosts. And be sure to subscribe to that on YouTube and your favorite podcast app as well. A guy that we've talked about a couple of weeks ago coming into the season, perhaps not red hot, is the captain, Brad Marchand. He had a trio of off-season surgeries over the weekend. Elbow, abdominal, and groin surgeries. And still, it appears as though he won't be missing any game action. While speaking to reporters, including the Boston Herald's Steve Conroy last week, Marchand said he expects to be good to go close to the start of training camp. He also noted that he would be shocked if he's not ready for the club's season opener against the Florida Panthers on October 8th. Jim Montgomery, with respect to the Jeremy Swayman contract situation, said that he likes to keep his veterans or to deploy his veterans more in the final 3 preseason games. So that gives Marchand a bit of time to come into camp, ease into things, and hopefully appear in 1 or 2 of those final preseason games with a view to being ready for the season opener against the Florida Panthers. And of course, on top of those injuries that he had the surgeries for, he was injured in that playoff series against the Panthers after taking that sucker punch from Sam Bennett. And that's another injury consideration to take into account. But it's great to hear that Marchand is expected to be ready for the season opener. Still one of the Bruins' best forwards, a major reason for their success last season, a major reason why they beat the Toronto Maple Leafs with a couple of huge games. He did appear in all 82 games last season. And he, as well as Frederick, is a guy who is set to become an unrestricted free agent next season, or next summer, I should say. And of course, there is a desire on both sides for Marchand to end his career in black and gold, and not just to do that, but end it on a highest of notes as the captain. How great would it be to see our short king lifting the Stanley Cup? His cap hit this season is $6.125 million, and he will be turning 37 on May 11th, hopefully when the Bruins are still in game action. Yes, he had 29 goals last season, 67 points, but there is a bit of a decline in his production over the past 3 seasons. 80 points 3 seasons ago in 70 games, 67 points in 73 games 2 seasons ago. He was coming off surgery then as well. And then 67 points in a full 82 games last season. He was still Boston's second highest scorer. He could drop there this season if Elias Lindholm comes in and lives up to his offensive potential, but still one of the most important Boston Bruins in the lineup. And we saw, again, in that series against the Leafs, how Marchand can come in and be a game breaker for this team when he's at his best. So I say he's a bit under pressure because, again, he's playing for that contract next season. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want it to be kind of a point of contention or something that people focus on. Thought it would be something that would have been rectified or taken care of this summer. Maybe they want to get Swayman signed so that they know kind of what they are going to be looking at in terms of cap space for next season, what the cap ceiling will be, what they want to commit to him, what they have left. But Marchand, again, such an important player to this team, facing a bit of pressure as the captain to do what Bergeron was not able to do before him, which was lift the Stanley Cup, although he only had a couple kicks at it as the captain. Again, he said a couple weeks ago at the captain's practice, he won't ever talk about his contract in the media. He and Sweeney have said, or Sweeney said after the season, that his goal is to make Marchand a lifelong Bruin. Again, there's some contention here in the Swayman contract talks. There's some question about what the Bruins might offer him at 37 years of age. His contract over the life of this $6.125 million cap hit has been extremely team friendly. He's had the best seasons of his career under this contract, but you're not going to pay him, give him back pay and reward him for those as you're moving forward. As a 37-year-old, you want to be able to build a competitive team around him in these later years of his deal. At the same time, you don't want to give him the Zdeno Chara treatment and say, we're going to go younger. Thank you for your service. You're free to sign elsewhere. That would be a major, as it was to Chara, it would be a major slap in the face. So Marchand has to prove that through all these surgeries over the past few years, that he's still durable, reliable, and one of Boston's most consistent offensive threats in all areas of the game. The man advantage, shorthanded, even strength. And also, there's a bit of the need for a big season to, maximize the best years of his career in terms of winning. Who knows what would have happened for the Bruins had he been healthy that whole series against the Florida Panthers. There's every reason to believe they could have at least pushed it to a Game 7 had he not been injured. A lot of Bruins, especially David Pastrnak, has said that's a major regret from last season, was not getting it to a Game 7. And if they win that, who knows what could have happened following that series. So I'm looking for a big season here from Brad Marchand. Second season as captain. He's more comfortable in a leadership role on this team. Obviously, he has so much respect in the room from all players. A lot of the free agents, Lindholm, Zadorov, credited the Bruins culture for the reason why they wanted to come here. That was, it's been there all along, but this stage of the Bruins culture was really cemented by Chara, carried on by Bergeron, and has been maintained by Marchand, who's no doubt looking to make his own mark as captain of the Boston Bruins. So you add that to the fact that he's going to be doing a new contract this season, and I'm expecting him to have a big, big year here for the Boston Bruins. Of course, there's one other guy who's needing a big season, and that's Jeremy Swayman, provided he is signed, and we'll discuss him here as the podcast continues. We are 2 days away from Boston Bruins training camp, and Jeremy Swayman remains without a contract. The absolute latest comes from Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet. Before we get to that, I will say that Don Sweeney was asked about it by Kevin Paul DuPont last week, and all Sweeney said was, appreciate you asking. Kick it down the road. We'll talk next week. So Sweeney and Swayman's representatives will talk a bit more this week. Hopefully today. Hopefully very soon, because again, training camp begins in 2 days. Now, Elliot Friedman talked a bit about it on the 32 Thoughts podcast this morning. He also added a written note, and it all came back again to the arbitration. He said, for one thing, it's quiet around Jeremy Swayman as everyone tries to bridge the philosophical differences, those being on Swayman's side, He's done everything he can to show that he is an elite number one goalie at the NHL level who deserves to be paid as such. On the Bruins side of things, they are wanting to see him take that mantle without the hedge of Linus Ullmark in the lineup and become that 2 out of every 3 game starter who can maintain that level of production before they give him Charlie McAvoy money or Sergei Bobrovsky money. Friedman added, one thing that's definitely happened with Swayman, it has reminded teams why you should move mountains before taking cornerstone players to arbitration. Every few years there's a case, leaving lasting bitterness on someone's part. The best news for the Bruins is their number one goalie still wants to sign long term. We've heard from Swayman himself that there were bitter feelings after last season, the arbitration hearing that occurred last summer. Neither party wanted to go to arbitration this summer, although you could argue that, it would have at least gotten him under contract for this season. He took it very personally, and he's educated himself, won't settle for anything less than what he deserves and what he believes comparable goalies should be set up to earn moving forward, like an Igor Shesterkin next summer. He's thinking about his fellow goaltending brethren as well. So maybe the Bruins regret taking him to arbitration, but they're sticking to their guns and maybe wanting to give him a shorter deal to maximize his value in these years, and also to make sure that he can indeed carry the load without Ullmark as his partner and with someone like Korpisalo or Bussy buffering him. But the good news is, as he said, he still wants to sign long-term. It hasn't gotten to the point where he wants to sign elsewhere or he's asking for a trade or anything like that. It is, he wants to be here. The Bruins want him to be here. It's just nailing down that term and valuation. And it's that philosophical difference. It's a chicken egg situation, as I've said here. What comes first? The big contract, and he plays through it and proves that he's worth it, or he proves that he can do it first and then earns that bigger contract a bit down the line, kind of like Connor Hellebuyck or Sergei Bobrovsky earning that big money deal. So we'll see. Again, he hasn't taken his team to a Stanley Cup final. He hasn't been a finalist for the Vezina Trophy. A guy like Hellebuyck hasn't had the team success, but he's got the personal success. He's starting the biggest deal of his career later on in his career. Bobrovsky was given that $10 million deal by the Panthers without the playoff success, with some personal success, and then he earned it big time this past season, winning the Stanley Cup. So that's the situation here with Jeremy Swayman as it stands. They're going to talk this week. There's perhaps some regret on Boston's part for taking him to arbitration, but it happened, and here we are. This is what cards have been dealt, where the situation stands. And because Swayman was taken to arbitration, he's not going to settle for anything less than what he believes he is worth. And we're 2 days away from training camp with no knowledge of a breakthrough from Elliotte Friedman in terms of whether or not they're going to come to a resolution here anytime soon. All right. We believe a deal will get done. Do follow the YouTube account for all the latest breaking news with respect to our Boston Bruins. If and when something breaks, I'll be sure to post a short over there. Please do subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app and on the on YouTube. Do check out Locked On NHL on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube as well. And thank you so much for taking some time to listen. I hope you had a great weekend. Please do take care of yourselves and each other. And we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.